All right, we've got a great episode of Inspired or Acquired. Today's guest, Dustin Keller, has built Alpha Automotive from a little auto repair place he bought when he was 19 to a group of 9 stores now, and he is cranking. So I don't know about you, Clint, but one thing I just really enjoyed is just hearing how intentional he is now and how much bigger he's thinking, which people will find in the show. But what do you think people are going to appreciate about this one?
I think it's just another example of these guests giving us an all access pass to their world and not shying away from any hard question we ask them. And I think this is especially revealing from this guy that just kind of started as an operator in the space and is now really thinking systematically and growing intentionally to build something really special there in Ohio.
Yeah, I agree. He was a total open book. So enjoy the episode with Dustin from Alpha Automotive. See ya.
Some days we keep on rolling.
All right. Welcome back to Inspired or Acquired. This is the podcast where we interview real business owners, talk about real numbers, and ask them whether or not they would sell. We have a fun one today. An old friend from Ohio, Dustin Keller, is the owner of Alpha Automotive, and he's got a really interesting story and journey that we're excited to dig into today. So, Dustin, how are you?
I'm outstanding. Good to see you again, Patrick. And Clint, pleasure to meet you.
Good to see you.
Excited to be here.
And we've got Clint Fiore, co-host as always.
Good to see you guys. And Dustin, great to meet you. Excited to have this convo.
Pleasure's all mine.
All right. Before we dig in on the valuation stuff, Dustin, for 30 seconds or a minute, just tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of what the business looks like these days.
Like we preemptively were talking about land banking and real estate and building a cash flow statement and a balance sheet. We try to increase revenues to buy assets and then do it over and over again. And we specifically use automotive repair centers, collision centers, tow truck companies, and mechanical centers to do that.
Awesome. And you're up to how many locations now?
We have 9.
All right. So I met you back in the day when I had an old red Subaru station wagon, and you had the 1 location, and now you're up to 9, which is incredible.
Yes,
so awesome. Okay. Clint, you want to
Great,
take it
man.
away?
Yeah, Dustin, just thanks for coming on. I'm excited to unpack this. You sent us some great information before the show, so I've been looking that over. Just tell me really quick, how much of this, I'm going to call it mini empire here that you're building, how much of this do you own, and what does your cap table look like? Do you have a bunch of partners, or how
currently
does your
I have one
business look?
partner, and that is my CPA and business partner, Steve Cox. He owns an accounting firm, actually, Patrick, Romans One Financial Group, and he purchased 49% of Keller Automotive and Keller 9 from my stepmother and my father. And then after that, we decided to create this parent company, Alpha Automotive. We sold a portion of, or one of Keller Automotive's assets, or 80% of that, where we got some money to go ahead and double down on the auto repair business and buy 3 locations. And then we bought 3 more locations, and then opened 2 more this year. So now we're in the process of identifying more auto repair centers to increase revenue and increase assets, primarily real estate, tooling, equipment, tow trucks, cars, things like that, rental cars.
Okay, so everything you do is automotive related, but you've kind of got some synergistic businesses. It sounds like you've got collision repair, brake service, auto repair, towing. What other types of businesses are in your current portfolio right now?
It's really all, like you said, automotive centered businesses. So we call it the automotive circle of life. So from towing and recovery to reconditioning and repair to sales and a certain level of finance. So really, it started with I bought my first auto repair center in 2005 that came with a U-Haul business. And I was 19 years old. we did a lease purchase on a building, and we did $250,000 in gross revenue for U-Haul. And at 19 years old, that gave me $31,000 worth of net revenue, which we were able to leverage, open an auto repair garage. And then from there, we bought a tow truck company. And then we sold, like I just said a minute ago, a tow truck company, and then started double down and buying multiple auto repair centers. So by increasing revenue and leveraging that revenue to buy assets, which comes with more revenue.
Yeah. Well, just looking through your system, I mean, it looks like you are executing a strategy that's a little different than a lot of our entrepreneurs that come on here. And so when I look at your revenue and profit and kind of what's your EBITDA or adjusted earnings, it seems like your asset base is much higher than the revenue and earnings, value could support on its own. And it's almost like you're using the cash flow to bank land or bank real estate along the way. And I want you to introduce the concept of land banking that you were talking about before, because this is kind of a neat thing that happens in some of these physical location real estate heavy businesses. Like if you're buying all the real estate here, you may end up with a real estate portfolio that's worth multiple times the value of your operating businesses that sit on the real estate. And so how are you pulling that off, or how do you think about that? And can you explain the concept of land banking and how you think about it?
Sure. So we've looked at models from other VC firms out there and how they've purchased, majority stakeholders and a lot of the operating entities. A lot of times they'll buy these operating entities that come with real estate, and then they'll sell off the real estate so that they can get more income to buy more operating entities because they're more interested in the income. But in recent times, specifically here in Columbus, Ohio, if you look at the increase in value in land, which you can't get more of, you've got increased values of real estate that are climbing somewhere between 18 and 23% as well. So if we can keep our earnings on our operating entities of around 12 to 14%, and then we can also compound that on top of 19 to 23% in increased value on real estate, then we can really compound our total, net revenue and our total return on investment. So the most recent deal that we did in March, we actually closed on March 29th. The deal was a business here locally downtown Columbus. And we were able to raise the money to buy this deal. And it was unique because it was $1.4 million in revenue. The business entity or the asset purchase agreement was $250,000, but we had a comp for the building that was $3 million. Okay, but they couldn't they couldn't sell the building for the higher amount because it had this living, breathing organism, the business in it, and there was some emotional attachment to not only the customers but the employees and so on and so forth. So this seller reached out to Alpha Automotive and said, "We think you're going to be a perfect fit for this," and we were able to negotiate really favorable terms. I mean, and we basically. We put $660,000 down on this deal. That was $1.65 million. Seller carried back with a 5-year balloon payment at a way lower interest rate, almost half of what a conventional institution would do. And that's just an example of one deal, and we've been able to do that multiple times. And then we can look at a tax return and say, okay, well, this owner is paying himself X, and this owner is paying another holding entity rent, which is X. And then we can say, hey, we want to put together a successful deal, and we know what this net revenue is, add back the owner's income and the rent, which is a very simple thing to do, and say, hey, if you want this deal to be successful, here's your upfront, and they can save some tax money by taking less of the money up front and spreading it over a few years, 10 years. So that's just an example of the deals that we're putting together.
So you took that one down for essentially 1.65 for the business and real estate?
Correct. And the
Awesome.
business and the property was listed for 1.9 million, and they had offers of that, and they turned it down because they didn't want the business to go away. They took a significant discount because of it.
Yeah,
Do
so
you
it sounds
think
like
you can also improve the business?
Oh,
once you take it over?
absolutely. I mean, this was a great business, but the operator was, 72 years old, working in the business, had a great business, a great following, but wasn't using the same type of technology that we're using. They didn't have a CRM. They weren't sending videos and pictures. Their labor rate hadn't been adjusted for years. So we went from $95 an hour labor rate to $139. And then on our big trucks, this store actually did semi trucks and stuff like that. So on some of the bigger stuff, we're getting $165, $175 an hour.
Wow.
So absolutely, we improve revenue.
So you're doing, between the 9 locations, roughly $7 million currently in revenue.
Well, we
And
did
call it-
almost 7 million last year, but we added 2 new locations this year. So
Okay.
we're on pace to do about 12 million this year.
Wow.
Great. Yeah, and so last year your net operating income was over $500,000, so you were running a little under 10%. So if you maintain that margin and up it to 12 million, are you thinking million and change in operating income this year?
Correct, but we will reinvest and double down on additional acquisitions, so we'll capitalize some of that.
Yeah. Great. And I guess it just brings me to this question. When I look at your balance sheet and I look at what you've acquired already, I see 15 million plus of assets. I don't see a ton of debt. How much debt do you have? 5
A
million?
little under that. At the one that you're looking at, which I think was end of the year, so we did add two new locations. So, probably, like I said, about another $1 million in debt.
Yeah, so you may have, just on the assets here, 10 million plus of equity, and we're not even talking goodwill yet, I don't think, of the business itself, of the operating entities. This is more of the real estate that's been acquired. Is that a good way to think
Correct.
of it?
We have 3 uplines that we're focused on. We've got this income-based asset, which is all the operated entities, and then we've got a real estate portfolio that is paid for by the operating entities. And then we are in the process of doing some integration. So we have created an app and some technology and a vendor management platform and a communication job board tool to help load level all of our shops that we hope to be able to offer to some other businesses here in Central Ohio to be able to prove our concept. So we have a technology that we, also hope to leverage and,
Yeah, so this brings me to the question I always get to on this show, which is the inspired or acquired question. You're getting some synergies across this network. You're getting good enterprise value as a whole as you layer in this technology and the management and achieve more efficiencies and better margins in some of these acquisitions by layering in that technology and utilizing the real estate and the personnel more efficiently across this network. You're going to end up with a very valuable company very soon, especially at the rate you're growing. So if you were to cash out and sell today, you and your partner might be able to net out an 8-figure exit after all debt and fees are paid. And a lot of listeners would say, man, that is really good money for how long you've been in this game. But you can also see you're in this tremendous growth rate to where, a few years from now, what could be 10, 15 million today could be 20, 30 million of enterprise value or net value after you pay off debt in the coming years. And it just makes me think, like, how do you think about the exit plan? And do you have an end goal here? Do you have an end of the rainbow you're working for? Or like, how do you think about that?
No, not yet. We're still, obviously staying in contact with some of our largest competitors. We've been blessed to recruit and onboard a new controller a couple months ago who came from, I won't say the name, but they had 100 body shops. So we're learning stuff from
Mhm.
her and putting some stuff in place that I think is going to add a ton of value. Um, so, I mean, I'm 40 years old and I got at least 10 more years to work. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. But we always are up for a conversation. So we always take the meeting and we don't pretend to know it all. So,
I had a deal that I helped the seller of where it was a chain of tire shops. It was all over Central Texas. And he ended up selling to private equity buyer, but he retained all of the real estate. And so he basically sold the operating company and got a nice payday there, and then ended up with a bunch of triple net leases from a top tier of candidate, which I think really drives up the value of the real estate itself. You know, the quality of the lease can really impact the valuation on the real estate. Is this something that's kind of in your long term vision of maybe just becoming parlaying this automotive operation skills that you've got into one day becoming a major commercial landlord?
absolutely. We've actually had a couple evaluations a few years ago. Obviously, we've doubled in size. But the larger we get and the larger the tenant is, we understand that the actual fair market value of the real estate could be, 120% of that with a good lease and a good, national tenant potentially. So it is definitely
Mm-hmm.
on the radar.
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick break from the show just to tell you about our companies for a second. I'm Patrick Dichter and I own Apple Tree Business Services. We do quality accounting and tax nationwide. So if you're running a business or looking to buy a business, we'd love to help you out with accounting and tax services. You can find us at appletreebusiness.com. And Clint, tell us about Bison Business.
Yeah, Bison Business is my firm. We do nationwide M&A, so we help people buy and sell companies. Most of our customers have companies in the 1 to 20 million revenue range, profitable businesses. So if you've got one and you're ready to get acquired, you can reach out to us at bisonbusiness.com for a complimentary valuation. We can get you to market and get you sold. If you're a listener that's a buyer that wants to buy a company that size, make sure you're on our email list, because we'll send you out deals first before they hit the market anywhere else. But we'd love to serve you anytime you're thinking of acquiring or selling your business. We want to be your first stop at Bison Business.
Awesome. Now back to the show.
Interesting. Well, cool, man. Well, I wanted to introduce this concept to you and to the listeners. I'm going to consider this one of our first of a series of whale shark interviews here on Inspired or Acquired. And so I always think of whale sharks as people that are half whale, half shark. Whale would be like an investor mindset that's this long term. That's what like financial advisors call high net worth targets of customers is whales, and casinos call the high rollers whales and things like that. And they're typically considered this um, high finance investor type of person. But then we've got sharks popularized by the Shark Tank show, at which people think of entrepreneurs, that are out there getting bloody in the marketplace, hunters, making things happen, getting things done. And I think the whale shark in the entrepreneurial sense is a little bit of both, where you've got the DNA of a shark. You're an operator, you know how to run these businesses, get in the trenches, earn the respect of your team, but you're also thinking of long-term wealth accumulation via small business and a multi-business strategy to that. And so that's the whale shark I'm thinking of. And I think that what's so cool about you is you're just kind of like this normal guy. You're not an equity group. You didn't raise a fund, right? Like you didn't have a bunch of other people's money to play with here. And you've achieved this much already. Can you give us like a little bit of insight into how you got down this road in terms of, I think a lot of people hear where you're at and are going to be really blown away by where you're at and where you're going. But like, how does one get even started on the road to become a whale shark?
Well, I mean, my favorite, the most thing I love about my job the most is, at this point in the game, is meeting um, the baby boomers, the 60, 63, 70-year-old individuals who have this successful business. They have real estate that's more or less paid off, and they've got good revenue. They've got employees that love and respect them, but they have no exit strategy. And they are looking for someone who cares about the business and about the community and about the real estate and about all the things that they've built. And I get to sit at the table and I get to figure out what what is going to accomplish their goal, what's going to accomplish my goal, and how do I take this, to the next level. Well, we're a dealer alternative, so we can provide the tooling, some money, some training, and some things like that to compete with the dealer. You can see on my shirt it says Wayne's Auto Repair. So we have 3 Wayne's Auto Repairs. Wayne's a good friend of mine now. He's retired. I helped him with that, which I'm proud of. And then we've got Ernie's Auto Repair, and then we've got Complete Brake Services. We've got Imports Plus Automotive. And then we've got my original store, which is Excite Auto Repair and Towing. And then we spun off to Excite Collision Repairs. But we really get to, there was a book I read called The Irreplaceable Service Writer, which when a customer comes in, you flip on the turn signals and you make sure that everybody knows that you may have a waiter, and then you identify the needs or the concerns of the customer that you're trying to service their vehicle, but you do the same thing with the person who's trying to sell the vehicle, and then, you do the same thing with your banker when you're trying to tell the story. And that's why I gave you guys this timeline and this org chart. And then you got these individual balance sheets and P&Ls for every store. And then you got to figure out how to consolidate all that information, and then repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. So, that is, and closing the deal and moving that person to the next step and to the next level. And it's just so much fun and my favorite thing to do. So I don't know if that answers
Patrick,
your question, but in a roundabout way.
Patrick, let's pull up the timeline. Patrick, can you pull that up so the people on YouTube can see it?
Yeah, let me see if I can screen share this.
I would love to kind of walk through this a little bit more, Dustin. I think that was a great high level overview, but I'm kind of curious as to kind of like how many, you started with your own store as an operator, and it sounds like you started a few and then you got into acquisition mode. I'd love to hear kind of when that happened and what helped you turn the corner from being this kind of like self-made startup, run your own thing kind of guy to thinking about let's go buy the boomers businesses. Like, what was the catalyst there? What helped you turn the corner there?
Well, I had somebody come and try to buy or bought a portion of one of my businesses in 2000. Well, first of all, my CPA bought out my parents when they were ready to retire. And my dad was fairly conservative at the time and was looking at retirement and didn't want any more stress, and Steve gave him that opportunity, which was great. But Steve was still ready to double down. And we had put some money on the street for some people in auto loans prior. So I knew he was a fit for me and my personality and how we wanted to grow. So you can see right there when Steve bought Keller 9 and Keller Automotive in 2019. And then in 2020, one of Keller Automotive's assets was Stealth Auto Recovery. Well, we sold 80% of that to private equity. And then we were able to double down and buy the 3 Wayne's Auto Repair Centers, and then Ernie's Auto Repair. And then we spun off the 3 collision centers. And then we've been able to continue to do that pretty aggressively for the past 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm. So I know there's people that are listening that are maybe looking for their first deal, or they're like new to the acquisition space. And one of the advantages of once you kind of become an established whale shark, where you've got this kind of reputation in the industry of multiple acquisitions and have some weight behind you, and people see you know what you're doing and you're a long-term player, I think you have a few advantages. One is a lot of these deals, especially the ones like you're talking about, where the real estate might not be highest and best use in the business that it is, and it's going to require to keep the business, you're going to have to sell to a trusted operator who can take care of the employees. And you want to sell to somebody that already has a reputation, that knows what they're doing in the space, and that if you're going to sell or finance it or get creative with the structure, someone that already has 9 or 10 locations and a longer term reputation in the space is a lot more comfortable for these baby boomers to finance their deal to than a newbie that's fresh out of business school and doesn't have the same reputation. You also, I think, get an advantage of deal flow, because it sounds like some of these people are coming to you, right? Because they're striking out with other folks, and then you become kind of the well-known go-to buyer in your region and in your industry. And so I guess that's what I wanted to ask you is, are you feeling like you're starting to get that momentum now with your reputation, where deals are starting to come to you, or how are you getting in on some of these acquisitions, because you're doing acquisitions at a good clip?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've got, like I said, we've got 8 decent deals in the pipeline right now, and and that's why we create these images and these visual aids to help tell the story. Because you're always talking to a banker. I mean, that's really what my job now is to Brad Sugar's an action coach. I mean, I worked with the action coach for several years, and learning the game of leverage. He has a game that's kind of fun. And when I was getting my MBA, we talked about social capital and and really the relationship and using that as leverage to get these deals done. Whether it's the finance end of it or the relationship end of it, it really really helps. And for people that are trying to own their own business, and they don't have, 9 or 42. I listened to one of you guys' shows, and the guy had 42 franchise stores, which was impressive. But at the same point, you got to start somewhere. And Brad Sugar's read a book called Billionaire in Training, which I just reread. And usually everybody starts with this employee mentality, and then you got to become a business owner and then an entrepreneur. But you also just got to take action, and you got to learn to delegate, and you got to learn to trust, and you got to create these KPIs. So right now we're putting systems in to where the shops are connected and integrated to where we get, my phone gets an alert 7:15 every day, how many invoices were created, what was gross revenues, what was net revenues, how many tires we sold, how many oil changes we did, and those type of things. So now we're getting to which is, I love 7:15 every day. Sometimes I don't love it as much as some days, but some days I really love it.
Yeah.
See the register ring.
Yeah.
So what, this year you're 9 stores, 12 million top line. Like, what do you want the operating business to look like in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, it's funny because we're not a franchise store, but we are Napa Auto Care. So we get this national warranty, this national exposure, this national branding behind all of our stores, and we get, it's outstanding. And they actually give us a lot of support in marketing and financial support. Where a franchise store, you would pay out a fee to a national franchise, where we get the opposite. We just buy the parts that we would normally sell, and they pay us, and we don't have to pay them anything except for what we would already pay them. But
Nice.
A couple of years ago, I signed a nice deal with Napa, and I said I wanted to be at 10 stores, and they said, Dustin, why not 30 stores? And I said, you know what, Chris, that's a good question. Why not 30 stores? So the goal by the end of this year is 15 stores, and we've got the deal flow to do it. We just have to. It's an emotional scenario. Some deals you can get wrapped up in a few months. Some deals take a year or a little more, just because you just got to get through that acceptance that somebody's probably retiring, and your baby is being passed on to someone else who's going to care for it just as much as you did. So,
Got it. So maybe 15 this year. What are your constraints? Is it like deal flow? Is it like technicians and labor? Like, sounds like you've got this thing humming, but obviously, like, you go through phases. Like, are you taking people who don't have a background and you're training them, or like, what are your bottlenecks at this point?
bottlenecks right now, like I mean, it's when you go to closing, like we're in contract with a body shop right now that we were in contract. We opened 2 stores in the process of negotiating a deal that's been in contract for almost a year. But we attempted to do an SBA deal, never done one before. Normally, I do these conventional out of the box deals. The SBA deal looked great, no money out of pocket. Like you said earlier, we've got a ton of equity. It's not required. But you get to the end of the table. Next thing you know, you need another environmental. It's just the type of real estate we buy is beneficial because it's preferential zoning is what I like to say. So if you're zone manufacturing, light industrial, or community services, you can do anything on that piece of real estate. Anything you can. Obviously, residential is the easiest thing to build for the most part, but putting a salvage yard in or a parking lot in Columbus, Ohio, putting a parking lot. If you can put semi trucks on your lot, you can sell an acre of ground for $600,000. And not too many people even know that. You know what I mean? You're focused on buying the average home now around here is around $500,000, but on a less than a quarter acre of ground. You know what I mean? So it's unique, and sometimes you got to go through the environmental stuff, and you just got to check all the boxes, and sometimes you got to wait for people to do their job so we can do ours.
Yeah, I still think I want a little bit more elaboration on this turning point, because I feel like you did turn this corner. You said things just in this conversation, and you started thinking way bigger, and you started thinking about like your highest leverage activity is probably doing deals and negotiate and running this thing as a system and thinking system wide and holistically, whereas you were an operator of a store in your past, and so at some point you went from kind of this technician, this owner operator, to like this owner of a system that thinks way bigger and is thinking scale in a lot of ways at a bigger level than a lot of your sellers that you're acquiring have ever thought, that are a lot of these owner operator, old school owners that have faithfully ran their location for a lot of years. Was it a coaching program? Was it the MBA? Was it a book you read? Can you point to anything that was like an aha moment for you that helped you kind of unlock this kind of higher level of thinking about?
Or was it our first episode with Brian Beers?
Yeah.
And,
or was it inspired or acquired?
you got the competitive juices flowing when we told him,
Absolutely.
he's worth.
I mean, it's honestly a combination of it all. Like I spoke about earlier in the MBA program, it was about social capital and who you know. So when I got out of there, in 2006, I went out and joined a networking group, which is where I met Patrick, actually, a dozen plus years ago. So through relationships, and it's not all done. I mean, I have raised private money. Okay. So we have used other vehicles, like the one that we did in March. We did a convertible note, and we sold interest in the real estate only. So we don't own, we own 55% of that real estate holding, and then we own 100% of the operating entity. And then I'm the managing member of that specific asset. So if you look at the org chart, and if you want to share the org chart, you're welcome to share what our org chart looks like, and everything flows up. All but 2 entities, that specific real estate holding company, and then another large collision center that we have here in Westerville, Ohio, who a good friend of mine invested in, and we own a small trucking company together completely outside of Alpha, which was a really cool, unique deal I'd love to share sometime with you guys. But, I mean, you just don't know what the deal is. I mean, me and Maddie, we bought a trucking company together with zero money down, with 6 paid off trucks, $1 million worth of revenue, and significant net revenue to us. And it was just a unique deal. But like I said, when you read these books and you see things like read the E-Myth, Action Coach talks about that and creating systems. A lot of the most valuable things sometimes you can get from a merger, an acquisition is the people and the stuff that I've learned. Another partner of mine in another business who runs 7 of my automotive repair centers, Jason Adams, came from the Wayne's Auto Repair deal. And he is an extreme wealth of knowledge and is very helpful in our systems and that we create. And And I learned a lot from that first initial acquisition that I changed the way we operated our shop. And we change all the time when we find better, bigger and better ideas. And then from another networking opportunity, I met Chris Orecchio, who was an action coach at one point in time, and he referred me to Dennis Booth, who's running my two collision centers. And he used to run 3C Body Shop, which is a really large collision center here in Columbus that sold a few years ago for $22.5 million. And I seen what Bob Juniper did and what Dennis did and what those guys were doing, and now we're doing it. So we're learning from these other sales on how to create value and how to create systems and how to grow.
Cool. I'm picking up some themes here, man. That sounds like the MBA was useful to teach you some concepts, but then networking is really what supercharged it and getting you around some people doing business at higher levels that kind of expose you to their way of thinking. And you're not trying to necessarily reinvent the wheel here. You're taking some proven strategies that have worked for other folks and applying it inside your industry and just doing good work and taking good care of folks and being a man of your word and growing that reputation one deal at a time, one location at a time, and that's kind of snowballing for you, it seems now. And so, want to commend you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, when I joined Gold Star right out of college, where I met Patrick, my first year of just doing face-to-face marketing, I increased my bottom line by a little over $100,000, and that was mind blowing at the time. You know what I mean? But now I can tell you it's millions of dollars a year. And I started my day this morning by going to an AmSpirit meeting from 8 to 9 with 20 other like-minded individuals who share referrals and act as a referral source or a sales force for each other's businesses. We take care of each other, and we know that if somebody needs something, we're going to step up and do it. And that's how I've grown my businesses. So I think it's important to get out and meet people and just know, like, and trust.
Yep. It's old school, but it works. Getting around good people,
Absolutely.
shaking hands, and being part of something in your community, man. So that's awesome. Tell me about, man. I don't want to take up too much time because there's so many nuances and rabbit trails we could go down here. But one of the things that speaks to my heart as a broker and somebody that's a deal guy is you've got the CPA partner, you've got the org charts, you've got your legal structures, you've got your accounting, so that it all sounds like this is very sellable. And a lot of people don't think about that when they're building their empires or they're building their companies. Is a lot of people just kind of resort to bank account balance accounting. If the number's going up and the top line's going up and the bank account's growing, and then I'm doing good. But it seems like you're being very purposeful in terms of documenting, having KPIs, having dashboards, having good accounting so that you can show off your company to bankers, to brokers, to potential suitors at any time, because you're already running it in a way that's kind of making it show ready for investors and banks and things. Is there something that clicked there, or do you have any advice to give a listener when it comes to just running your business so that you're growing the business you never have to sell or you never need to sell, but you easily could if you want to at any time? Like, what's some of your top pieces of advice in that realm?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's not that we want to sell, but when people, and I'm proud of it. So we create these visuals, and I'll sketch them out with a pencil and a ruler, and I'll write it out, and then I'll give it to my marketing and technology officer and say, "This is what I want. I want this to look good." And if I want to tell the story, if I'm telling somebody how everything flows to Alpha, without that org chart, people just, their heads spin and they're like, "What? You got a lot going on." And I'm like, "You're right." So, like your original story you talked about with the guy with the 42 stores, I can't wait for that org chart to be, 42 stores deep with 42 pieces of real estate or something very close to that. Some of these real estates are multi-tenant and things like that, different types of income, not just our operating entities, but we want to be able to tell that story to whomever wants to know, like, how does this work? And guess what? If, God forbid, I don't show up to work tomorrow, my wife and my kids and my business partners and my managers and my MarTech guy and my partner, Steve's not in the business every day. He's in Florida right now. So, I mean, he's available when I need him. But for the most part, me and my team, my executive team runs the business. But we also have manuals for everything. And we have systems that are documented to say, hey, this is how everything works. This is where this goes. And this is where that goes, so that for some reason, if somebody needed to pick up the playbook, they could follow it, 1 through 100 or 1 through 200 and make it happen.
That's great. Yeah. I think the more that you can, I think the typical baby boomer owner, they were taught kind of this old school way, which is a lot of the systems are in your head and you're kind of the hub and spoke or the most important person in your organization. And they're really proud of that and they're really competent and good at what they do, but it makes their business extremely hard to sell. And then when it comes to their accounting practices, and Patrick will preach on this all day, but it's, a lot of them, their books are muddy because they're used to trying to minimize their tax burden to the IRS. And that's really what they focus on. And I think the people that do this right on an accounting sense, you can take all the legal deductions you can, and I'm sure you do. But you can do it in such a way that if you want to show the earnings power of your business, you can easily do that. And there's kind of an art to that, setting up your chart of accounts right and documenting things right and being able to have your cake and eat it too, where you take advantage of the tax code as best as you can and take great deductions, but you can also show we are profitable and we do have real earnings power here. And I think a lot of the boomers they were just really taught the tax minimization side, but not the value maximization or the bankability or sellability side of this. And so I wanted to congratulate you for the path you're on there, because I think that's really important for folks that want to follow in your footsteps, is to think about the optics there to the third parties that are going to help you finance deals, invest in deals, and help you grow the empire along the way.
Awesome. Well, yep, I really appreciate that. We have a rental car company, so I don't own a car. I just whatever's not rented is what I drive. So we've got 18 rental cars right now, and obviously depreciation is one of my favorite games. So with real estate and cars and tow trucks, you can play the game with depreciation however you want, and it's
do you do the cost segregation? Yeah. Do you do the cost segregation things ever on your stores?
We've looked at it. We haven't had to go that route yet because it can be expensive getting an engineering firm involved in the way that they do that. But we've looked at it. I'm sure we will, for sure. It's definitely a good strategy.
Well, cool, man.
Awesome, man. You're on it. It's just amazing to see the growth and to see just how dialed in and organized you were, even for the show, to send us this org chart and timeline. It's super impressive. So
well, thank you. And thank you for your time and the opportunity to be here with you guys. Awesome.
Yeah, man. If people want to connect with you or find you online or find your stores, where should they go to find you on the internet?
Well, Alpha Automotive can be found at www.alphaautomotivellc.com. My cell phone number is 614-206-3606. It's been the same number for 20 years. Call me, text me anytime. Like I said, I'll always take the meeting. And appreciate everybody's interest.
You're the man.
Yeah, thanks so much for your openness and sharing some of your tips and tricks. I'm gonna stamp this one inspired, Patrick, because I feel like you're really starting to hit your stride here, Dustin, and got a good acquisition strategy going. It seems like you're having fun, got lots of energy, and so I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, keep making a difference in your community, and being a great leader there. And thanks for coming on the show and being so open with us.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you very much. Look forward to talking to you. All right.